Before we begin, leave a quick hi in the comments. It might seem small, but it helps YouTube share this story with more sci-fi fans like us. I want to know who's watching. The decision was made in silence. On the main platform in Triad Hall, 3 Eladari judges floated above a glowing surface, their robes glowing faintly blue. No cheers, no applause, just the heavy presence of countless unseen eyes. As the judgment message echoed through the stars above, a screen pulled back from a slowly turning Earth, then stretched past the Moon, then Mars, until the entire system was visible, cold, exposed, labeled, and forgotten. Chancellor Varel lifted a hand, signaling the room to quiet. His voice cut clean through the silence. Regarding the species known as Earth, this tribunal, authorized by the Alliance Eladari, finds humans to be unstable, culturally backward, and a threat to galactic peace. A hush spread through the chamber. The cameras zoomed out, showing spectators from many worlds. Some nodded in smug approval, others whispered in strange languages. No one objected. Varel's tone was flat and sharp. Starting today, humanity will be placed under temporary control. All military forces will be shut down. Orbital control shifts to coalition oversight. Cultural changes will begin soon. In the lower parts of the chamber, a group of Altari suddenly burst into laughter. Their eyes shimmered like chrome, their bodies woven from bone and silk. They nudged each other, whispering jokes in their native screech. Behind them, a Sulvar diplomat grinned widely, leaning into his translator mic. They still burn fuel in their ships. Their last war was fought with metal and fire. This isn't suppression, it's mercy. More laughter followed. An armored Altari chuckled and said, "Let them keep their sticks. Maybe one will end up in a museum." The broadcast was cut briefly, but then resumed. All over the galaxy, the same images were shown, a wide shot of the tribunal, then the announcement in many languages. On Earth, the silence felt different. General Archer stood alone in the central command room beneath New Geneva, deep inside a hidden bunker carved out of the Eurasian landmass. The light above flickered from the transmission screen as Chancellor Varel's words played on a loop. Around Archer, young officers sat silent, stunned into stillness. Nobody moved. Major Keller, tall and sharp-eyed, exhaled sharply through his nose and muttered, "They're serious. They really believe we're done." On Earth's networks, the tribunal's message kept replaying. Children in shelters clutched blankets tightly as alien judges announced their bleak future. Veterans, elderly and frail, watched from care centers with rapt attention. In orbit stations over Saturn, civilians stared at each other in disbelief. On Luna Colony Thor, a history professor froze mid-sentence, sat down slowly, and simply stared at the screen. Inside the war room, Archer stayed perfectly still. He watched Varel deliver the verdict one final time. Then he nodded once to Lieutenant Carson. "Play it," he ordered. Moments later, every channel, civilian, military, galactic, was taken over. The screen flickered again. No sound came through. It started with old footage, just restored and declassified this past week. A black-and-white image showed soldiers sneaking into a snowy outpost, silent and deadly. Then, a quick jump forward. Orbital weapons fired down from an ancient satellite, destroying a cruiser in one shot. Next, a desert attack. Tracked vehicles kicked up dust as soldiers in adaptive armor dashed past swarms of drones. They broke into an enemy fortress in half a minute. The view cut again. Over Europa, A drone flew over the ruins of a brutal siege. Burned ice, shattered sky bridges, and a soldier pulling his injured captain from a collapsing tunnel. The structure exploded behind them. Then came footage from the Arctic battles. Soldiers moving through freezing storms, coordinating flanking maneuvers and ambushes against giant war machines. Still no sound. And then, the biggest shot of all. Archer appeared on screen, older, toughened, real, no filters. His medals looked dull, his uniform loose, worn from years of command. He didn't stand tall or pose. He stared directly into the camera with cold eyes. He looked like a man who had seen too much and forgotten nothing. Calm, steady. A ghost the galaxy thought was long gone, now watching back. You should have checked our archives. The screen went dark. 10 seconds ticked by. Then chaos erupted. On the galactic social feed, billions watched live comments, votes, reactions. The channel exploded with disbelief and shock. A Kasari diplomat questioned, "Is this a joke?" Analysts from the Core Broadcast Guild said the war footage was centuries old and fake. They wondered why a human appeared on screen. Humans are thought to be extinct. For some species, that wasn't a joke. Entire generations grew up believing humans were just stories used to scare or justify budgets. In many archives across the mid-rim, Earth's location was marked as unimportant. In some areas, even the name Terra was replaced by numbers. These were erased over centuries of political manipulation. Could humans even travel faster than light? Everyone assumed they couldn't. Then, complete silence fell. Not from confusion, but from fear. The Varnari, a race of emotionless insect-like archivers, ended their live stream without a word. The Ural Confederacy, crystals with sharp minds, asked for full military files on Earth, but found all links locked or scrambled. They looked elsewhere, searching wartime records from nearby systems. Still, everything came back empty. Their experts concluded the same thing. Everything had been hidden purposely. Humans hadn't just been forgotten, they had been erased. Above Kepler 92, an Avenor commander watched the video 3 times. He whispered to his aide, "I fought in the Eladari War of 842. Those tactics aren't from simulations." That was muscle memory. In the Triad Hall, Chancellor Varel kept a steady face. His photos dimmed for a moment. It was a sign of worry, easy for those who knew how to read him. Back on Earth, inside the command room, chaos was quiet. Officers moved quickly, passing orders and messaged each other without shouting or laughing. Everything seemed set, like they had expected this. It looked rehearsed. In a shelter below ground, a teacher quietly signaled to her class to stay still. She raised a finger to her lips. The children obeyed without question. Some sat up taller. One clutched his toy tighter, knowing what it meant to be from Earth. On Luna, a retired lieutenant clapped once. Limping, he headed for the armory. On Mars, workers sealed the tram lines smoothly. They moved without panic, as if on autopilot. General Archer stood still for a few seconds, watching everything unfold. He spoke again, but this time only to his team. "They think they just kicked down a door," he said. "Let's show them what was waiting behind it." The halls under New Geneva still echoed with the broadcast's remains as old memories started to come back. Quiet, steady, unavoidable. Over 830 years ago, inside the Alliance Elodari's core offices, a small move was made with little fuss. The Rathari delegation, sleek and snake-like, clad in black glassy skin and glowing tendrils along their backs, presented a secret proposal to security bosses. It was about a species called Soul Origin Type 3 humans. They called them redundant, outdated, and emotionally unstable. The Rathari diplomat was named Sorak. Unlike others, he rarely raised his voice or sought praise. Their records show primitive dominance and quick aggression. The goal was to keep their powers in check. No one objected. The Sulvar wanted to distract from their internal struggles. The Oltari sought new voting power. The Elodari just worried about unrest. And so, the process began. Human history was systematically erased. Years of war were called myths. Military files were reclassified as simulations. Deep secrets were buried under layers of restricted access. No one ever saw them. Campaigns like the orbital crash over Phobos or the siege of Arcturus were reduced to footnotes. Even the name Terran Command was replaced with simple labels like Local Defense Cell 2274. By the 3rd century, Earth's allies spoke about them in past tense. The erase was encouraged, even pushed. Anything they couldn't erase was hidden. What couldn't be hidden was mocked. The Rathari's next move was quiet and precise. They recruited the Zenadal, shapeshifters and nomads. Without a home planet, the Zenadal had survived by selling their skills to anyone willing to pay. Their default form looked insect-like and amphibian. Long skulls, 4 black eyes that shone, and translucent skin that shimmered faintly. But they rarely stayed in one form for long. They were spies by nature, observers by biology. For one job, 50 Zenadal were sent out. Their task was simple: blend, watch, and report. Errol was one of them. He came to Earth during its rebuilding time. His job was to analyze data at the East African Technical Union. Others went into schools, shipping offices, marriage records, and spaceport lists. Some became performers, welders, or teachers. One worked as a bartender in the Martian city of Kaladesh for 36 years. They kept their true identities hidden until some chose to reveal themselves. The first cracks appeared quietly. Errol had grown close to a human named Daniel Croft. Croft was a former Air Force man turned cultural envoy. They argued a lot, shared laughs, and celebrated holidays together. When Croft was told he had a degenerative brain disease, Errol stayed by his side for 5 days. Croft died holding Errol's hand, whispering, "Thanks to a man who never existed." Errol stayed still, and something deep inside broke, something old and hard to name. Another Zenadel named Shun, working as a propulsion engineer in Tau Ridge, filed his 6th report late and then skipped it. Yarus, hiding as a technician on the Titan relay station, turned off her transmitter and left her station archived. She never explained why. In a secret Jakarta hideout, 5 Zenadals sat around a low table. They didn't disguise themselves. One, Tyrell, hissed, "You're getting too close." "We're not here to feel," he said. "We're here to watch." Errol kept his gaze fixed. "No, you were told to follow orders," he replied. "I was told to understand, and I did." Tjall shifted nervously, taking a defensive stance. "You're falling for them." "I am seeing them," Errol said. "Something you refuse to do." The room went quiet. Then decisions happened silently. Not together, just each one choosing. 12 Zenadal cut their transmissions completely. 5 of them married. 9 had children with genetics never seen before. Some vanished. Others, for the first time, stepped openly into Terran military bases and removed their disguises. At a hidden base in the Andes, General Kyer Brenner faced Errol. Brenner was a tough soldier with a silver beard. He had fought in the last Orion attack. The room was quiet as the alien waited. Brenner didn't wait long. He simply reached out his hand. "Either you're one of us now," he said, "or you don't understand what it means to be human." Errol stared at the hand. No weapons, no data chip, just trust. He took it and didn't let go. Days later, their first transfer started. It was a mix of special camouflage using images from nature layered over fields that threw off signals. Not just invisibility, complete fading away. It was a gift, and a warning rolled into one. Errol and two other Xenodels stood before General Archer and his main team. The briefing was brief. "They will come," Errol said, "but not alone." He paused. "Earthari power has grown in the Alliance. They will gather others to fight with them." Archer leaned back, eyes dark and unreadable. "What will they think about us?" Errol answered quickly. "That we're broken, unskilled, and desperate." Archer nodded quickly. "That might work." The humans shared their plan. The Xenodel would give their final report to the Alliance, but it would hide their true intentions. They wouldn't reveal the hybrid tech or the battle plan humans had worked on for years. The false report was ready. Within the higher ranks of the Alliance, reactions were fast. Earthari voice, Sorex, pounded the data scroll and shouted, "They are secretly speeding up their work. This breaks the treaty and threatens our peace." The Sulvar leader agreed. The Altari backed him up. Even the quiet Hezari nodded, worried about being seen as weak. In just a week, officials approved the plan. They called 3 fleets from different parts of the galaxy. Each fleet was made up of aggressive species, not known for brains, but for fighting. The Vogar, with their tough exoskeleton ships, never negotiated. The Kolul, methane breathers, fired at anything nearby. The Skriari, a fierce species, saw humans as an insult to nature. From Earth's orbit, General Archer watched as their signals went crazy. War was coming. Errol stood silent beside him. "They think they're here to crush us," Archer said. He didn't turn his head. "But they're walking into something they don't understand." Errol finally spoke in a quiet voice. "They aren't here to kill you." He looked at the dark sky between the stars. "They're arriving right on schedule." The first fleet crossed Neptune's orbit, engines blazing like shooting stars behind huge alien ships. The Vogar led, with giant ships made from living alloys. They had moving weapon arms and smaller pest ships around them. Their flagship, Ktoran's Spear, moved like a falling mountain. Its leader, a mass of muscle named Rojatan, broadcast one word on open radio: "Submit." No one answered. Moments later, the second fleet came from another route deeper in the system. The Kolul ships, with methane jets, pulsed and moved with sharp, segmented bodies. They specialed for breaking into atmospheres and dropping onto planets. The Skriari fighters moved quickly between sleek black ships with no visible engines or crew. It looked like they grew from the ground, still no response. The alien leaders expected resistance. They expected retaliation. Instead, they saw nothing. No satellites fired warnings, no beacons flashed, no fighters came out of the asteroid belt. The system was wide open, communications silent, sensors active, but no defenses. It was as if humans forgot how to defend themselves. Rojatan muttered in disbelief. "We aren't even challenged," he spat. "Their orbit is dark. We attack now. Burn their moons and the planet before they wake up." He gave the order. The attack was launched. The fleets moved forward, passing Mars without trouble. Then, suddenly, the system flickered. A quick blip on long-range signals. a slight delay in magnetic echoes. Most captains ignored it. Those who didn't were already dead. The first Vogar cruiser fell apart without warning. 1 second, it was there. The next, it burst into pressure and ion fire. The explosion split 2 interceptors and damaged a command frigate's front array. Seconds later, 4 more ships disappeared in a flash. No projectiles, no launch points, nothing left but emptiness. Kulsul commanders frantically ordered spectrum scans and pulse triangulation. But there was nothing to find. No engines, no energy traces, only the aftermath. Above Saturn, towers hidden in the methane cloud stirred to life. Long thought to be weather stations, massive plasma accelerators unfolded like giant flowers. They fired in quick succession. Horizontal arcs of intense heat cut through dozens of ships in perfect patterns. A Skriari frigate trying to escape vanished. Mid-burn, leaving no debris behind. On Kuturin's spear, Rojatan yelled for a full retreat, voice loud, and scrambled across channels. "They're cloaked," he shouted. "They're invisible." The second fleet tried to scatter. The Skriari shifted into refractive space, attempting tiny jumps, but their exit points collapsed midway. This caused violent implosions that twisted gravity around them and damaged a command frigate's front array. Seconds later, 4 more ships disappeared in a flash. No projectiles, no launch points, nothing left but emptiness. Kulsul commanders frantically ordered spectrum scans and pulse triangulation. But there was nothing to find, no engines, no energy traces, only the aftermath. Above Saturn, towers hidden in the methane cloud stirred to life. Long thought to be weather stations, massive plasma accelerators unfolded like giant flowers. They fired in quick succession. Horizontal arcs of intense heat cut through dozens of ships in perfect patterns. A Skriari frigate trying to escape vanished mid-burn, leaving no debris behind. On Kuturin's spear, Rojatan yelled for a full retreat, voice loud, and scrambled across channels. "They're cloaked," he shouted. "They're invisible." The second fleet tried to scatter. The Skriari shifted into refractive space, attempting tiny jumps, but their exit points collapsed midway. This caused violent implosions that twisted gravity around them. The Kulsul fleet fell back toward their carriers, rallying in formation. They launched kinetic warheads, trying to flood the area. That was a mistake. The asteroid belt suddenly responded. Rocks that seemed harmless exploded unexpectedly. Fields of magnetic shrapnel and mines lit up the space between Mars and Jupiter. Nearly half of the fleet was destroyed in less than a minute. Those that survived fled at full speed. On the Turvam Harath Vor, the Kulsul leader, watched his screens turn bright red. A thick, hooded amphibian with pale ridges along his head, he stared silently. "This isn't resistance," he whispered, looking at the wreckage of his fleet. "It's an extinction effort, and we aren't in charge of it," he said quietly, before shutting down the command feed. The team returned to the war room. No lights flickered, and no voices broke the silence. General Archer stood with his arms crossed, watching the scrolling reports on the side wall. The air was thick with ozone and stale coffee smell. Behind him, Lieutenant Saw used a stylus to verify timestamps against moving windows. "They're retreating," Saw said in a neutral tone. Archer replied simply, "They were never pushing forward." No one needed confirmation. This trap had been set hours earlier. Colonel Trent, a thin man with sunken eyes and a permanent frown, stepped forward. "We're picking up isolated survivors from both fleets. Scattered ships converging at grid point Theta 5, he reported. Archer nodded. Let them limp back to the Third Fleet, he said without a smile. He turned back to watch the wall. Meanwhile, in deep space, remnants of the First and Second Fleets struggled toward rendezvous points. Out of nearly 300 ships, only 17 made it. The rest were wreckage or silently spinning in gravity traps. Communications were down. Navigation was frozen. Some captains had already triggered self-destruct rather than be scavenged. The survivors reached Theta 5, a cold, empty stretch near the Kuiper edge. There they found the Third Fleet. Unlike the others, the Rathari hadn't advanced or fired a shot. Their formation was still, their ships cold and unreadable. Dozens of long, dark ships floated like coiled predators in a calm spread. Sorek stood on the command deck of the Anshoreva, eyes half-lidded, tendrils twitching gently. He watched the approaching ships, checked their signals, and listened to the fear in their reports. Most transmissions were precise, but the sources were hidden. Satellites disguised as debris, systems invisible to sensors, remote detonation. Every fleet had vanished in silence. He stayed quiet. Next to him, the Rathari communications officer, smaller and with pale lights along his spine, asked, "Should we move our position?" Sorak finally opened his eyes. "Number this was expected," he replied. The officer hesitated. "The attack? The reaction?" Sorak corrected him. "It's about the demonstration." They wanted to show power. They got it. Behind them, a Skriari survivor sent a message asking to merge fleets. Someone else sent partial reports on losses. Sork nodded once, pretending that was all. He stepped down from the command chair and activated a sealed console. Inside, schematic projections of satellites, communication nodes, and orbital grids rotated calmly. Hidden among them were the real weapons. Cloaked drones, empty data frames, virus clusters. Let them think the fight is over. The real war isn't in the skies. The threat was already inside their systems. After the massacre near Jupiter, silence spread exactly as planned. But the next attack didn't come with guns. The first drone was cold and drifting, with a dead transponder and scorched metal fragments. Its hull looked like a broken Kulsul corvette, battered and irradiated, as if it had barely survived the chaos above Jupiter. It tumbled through a debris field and quietly attached itself to relay node K-21, orbiting high above Earth's dark side. Just 3 seconds later, the node stopped transmitting. No alarms sounded. 2 hours after the battle, dozens more arrived. They slipped into decaying orbits or hovered in shadowy areas, mimicking wreckage paths down to the millisecond. Inside each was Rathari infiltration code, viruses, pulse disruptors, and layered backups. All were designed to stay hidden until they activated. When they did, it was never loud. One old mining drone near Titan's outer ring flashed red, sent a fake software update to civilian navigation arrays, and went silent. It released scattered fragments with relay loops that took over the nearest defense buoy. Slowly at first, then more erratically, the orbital lanes started changing. Soon they vanished altogether, returning the system to the war room. Lieutenant Saw reported losing contact with Sector 6. Her voice was tense. She confirmed outpost pings on the Martian side had disappeared. General Archer kept quiet, staring at the central display wall. Rows of encrypted feeds blinked irregularly, some flickering out entirely. Colonel Trent spoke up, voice flat. "We see partial breakdowns across relay bands. Some stations are still active, but they're not answering queries. We've had to switch to fallback methods. Major Edos from Europa Command stepped forward. Sir, with the main uplinks offline, we're blind across 3 sectors. Long-range comms can't crack the fallback codes fast enough. Tactical relays are breaking apart. An uneasy silence fell over the room. Then the first bad news arrived. The Leonov stations had gone dark. Archer turned his head. Repeat that. The message was clear. Leonov, we lost telemetry and heat signatures 5 seconds apart. On the screen, a real-time map of Mars updated. A red X marked the orbit where Leonov had been for more than 600 years. The station once stood as Earth's first real orbital command. It survived mutinies, blockades, and riots. Now it was simply gone without a sound. No one reacted. The system showed one more light fading out. A second later, the feed caught up. A frame-by-frame replay showed the station's power grid flickering. Suddenly, without warning, a burst of internal heat shot up rapidly. 3 milliseconds later, whole separation happened. No enemy fire, no weapons detected, just a failure. Lieutenant Saul looked up. No escape pods launched. Trent's voice went quiet. How many are on board? Ed hesitated before answering. 112, mostly staff, 9 officers on active duty. No one spoke. In that quiet, tension grew thicker. Archer stepped forward. His voice stayed calm. Lock down all remaining command nodes. Isolate the internal navigation systems. Get dead relay links reactivated and confirmed. Anything not wired directly is now vulnerable. SAR responded fast, quickly inputting commands. Trent glanced at Archer. What if this is just the start? Archer didn't reply. Instead, he pointed to the tactical grid. Map every relay collapse. Find the pattern. Locate the source. A technician from the back called out, Sir, the ship-to-ship lanes between Neptune and Saturn aren't syncing with the grid anymore. Units there are making manual corrections. Trent asked, What does that mean? It means navigation is failing, the technician replied. Back in orbit, the 4th ship went down. A hospital ship returning from Saturn drifted 5 degrees off course and bumped into a civilian fuel ship. It was a slow collision, happening in a low-speed arc. The alert system reacted too late. Both ships exploded silently, debris scattering through space. In minutes, 2 more destroyers vanished. One was caught in a gravitational slingshot that was off course. The other got drawn into a dead zone where signals vanished. Sector 7 lost all contact. Back in the war room, Colonel Trent snapped to attention. We've lost contact with the Hammerfall unit near the moon. All bands are static. Major Edra stepped forward, pulling up data on a secondary screen. Secondary defenses are blocking us out. Many nodes report phantom override commands. We're trying to regain control, but the software is shifting faster than we can fix it. Lieutenant S.A. paused her steps. Sir, I think this is planned. All command, navigation, and fallback systems collapsed at once. It's not accidental, it's an attack. A young officer, Lieutenant Park, turned from his station. He looked pale. We're under attack, he said. Silence fell. Even Archer paused for a moment. Then quietly, he looked at the table. Begin containment, Trent asked. How? With what tools? Archer stayed calm. Use only local command, visual confirmation. No remote links or uplinks. We'll have to work blind if we must. Saul looked up. Sir, we don't even know where this is coming from. I don't need to know where, Archer said. I need to know what we still control. The room started to move slowly, with effort, but without panic. The map on the screen turned red and quiet. Outside Mars, in the shadow of the planet, a final video feed from a defense drone caught one last shot before it went dark. A cloud of debris resembling a cruiser's hull opened like a flower and released thousands of tiny units into Leonov's grave orbit. It showed no signature, but it didn't need to. Archer gazed at the darkening screen, his voice quiet. Activate Black Echo protocols from archives. Put all surviving battle groups on local authority. No dependencies. Assume all main systems are compromised. Eidos hesitated before asking carefully, "Is this the fallback plan?" Archer kept his eyes on the display. "We're there." In a distant corner, someone muttered, "It's happening again." No one responded. But in that moment, every man remembered stories passed down from previous wars. Not the ones in public archives, but those told by men who woke up screaming and never said why. The line was breaking. Humanity fought again, but it was not with pride or glory. This time, they were alone, and the darkness was no longer empty. While command fell into chaos, cutting off systems and hiding from the war room deep inside broken Phobos corridors, a flicker of resistance ignited. The pressure doors slammed shut behind them as the emergency red lights flickered. Lieutenant Mauro Vasquez ducked under a crackling pipe, rifle pressed tight against his chest. Phobos Station Delta II was crashing, power cutting off intermittently and gravity jerking wildly. 4 others from EchoL stayed close. 2 Marines, a systems engineer, and a silent figure with a long cloak, cloaked with a plasma burn across one shoulder, hunched forward. Errol, the Xenodel agent, faltered, his skin shifting colors under stress from green to bronze. Vasquez caught his arm. "Keep moving," the lieutenant ordered, mostly to the team. They'd been cut off for 40 hours. No signals, no tactical feed, no way to confirm if anyone was alive outside their oxygen supply. But an old magnetic relay buried beneath Phobos's surface, a relic from early lunar colonization, had pinged twice. Weak but alive. That's why they ran toward it. A sudden jolt went through the station. Walls groaned, the lights flickered, and then the noise started. Metal on metal, fast and far away. Drones. "Seal it!" shouted Corporal Dawn, spinning to weld a sliding door shut. Before he finished, the first drone broke through. A skeletal, arachnid-shaped hatch above opened, revealing a heavily armored drone with carbon-plated limbs flaring in a quick twitch. It locked onto the heat signature and lunged forward. Vasquez quickly drew his sidearm and fired twice. The first shot ricocheted harmlessly off, but the second struck the sensor cluster. Errol was already in motion, despite the burn he had sustained. He shifted his limb shape mid-stride, driving a hardened keton spike directly into the drone's core. The machine convulsed and then shook apart. Dawn sealed the opening behind them as silence returned. They reached the relay chamber 12 minutes later. The space was dark, cold, and had been mothballed for over 2 centuries. Dust particles floated weightlessly in the air. At its center stood a manual coil with 3 copper rings connected to a magnetic pulse engine that hadn't operated since before unification. Engineer Rajit Patel dropped to his knees beside the console. "We still have residual energy in the main coil. If I reroute from the thermal layer and trigger a pulse, we can send a short-range analog signal," he said. "It will be encrypted and avoid digital interception." Vasquez nodded without hesitation. "Do it." Errol sat against a wall, exhaling slowly, his skin flickering in dull blue-gray. "Even if it works, they might not recognize it," he said. Vasquez reassured him. They will. It's old enough. Patel rerouted power, sparks flying. He slammed a switch with his elbow and twisted the capacitor lock into place. When the pulse fired, it was sent 100 meters overhead, embedded in a fading external array. An old antenna glowing green for the first time in generations. The signal jumped, traveling just far enough. In orbit above Phobos, a Rathari drone detected conflicting navigation commands. It hesitated mid-flight, then recalibrated. Moments later, it exploded. Its override core received a reversed polarity burst from the station below. Errol looked up sharply. "They're listening," he said. A second later, every drone within 2 kilometers began to act erratically. Some spiraled out of control, others dove into the rock, and some simply shut down. "Sabotage worked," Patel muttered. "We have 7 minutes." Vasquez responded, "Good. Let's finish this." They moved through the wrecked maintenance shaft toward Control Ring C. Half of the ring was depressurized, while the other half was locked down. They pushed forward through flickering halls and melted consoles, quiet except for their breathing. 3 newer, faster drones appeared in the corridor. They hit hard. Patel got grazed on the leg and fell. Errol charged forward, intercepting one drone. It lashed out, slicing open his side. Vasquez turned at the sound of the impact and saw Errol collapse, one arm crushed beneath him and static flickering on his face from the shock. Vasquez didn't hesitate. "Cover!" he shouted as he dove into the fight. He dragged Errol behind a pillar, ignoring the burn on his arm where shrapnel had cut him. "You're hurt," Errol rasped. Vasquez looked at him and said, "You protected us for centuries. Now it's our turn." The alien's voice was cautious. "You're risking your life." Vasquez nodded. "You already did that for us. I'm just returning the favor." The last 2 drones charged at them, but twin flashes of blue struck from the side corridor. Don and Patel quickly re-engaged, using improvised flares, shorting out the last drones mid-leap. The hallway fell silent again. Patel, limping, moved slowly forward. Ring C's control cluster is 50 meters ahead. The team reached it without issue. Manual override took 17 seconds. Arl, barely steady on his feet, entered a command string from memory. It was a code he'd learned 10 years ago, but never expected to use. The sabotage loop reversed. In orbit, 5 more drones detonated. Something shifted across the system. Deep beneath the sea of tranquility, an old lunar relay came back online. Its analog pulse traveled along buried cable lines. Relays believed to be inactive for years reactivated. A magnetic field array responded near the Venusian outer ring, then another from Europa's crust. The signals spread outward, reaching beyond Phobos. On an atmospheric rig above Saturn, civilian operator Chen Liang rose from his console with wide eyes. A man beside him, a short, balding mechanic, tapped the console twice. Liang looked at him. The mechanic's form shimmered briefly, darkened eyes, shifting skin. "I am activating," the Zenard whispered softly. "Protect your reactors." Then he vanished. In 6 other locations around the system, mines, labs, hubs, people turned to familiar colleagues and saw change. Not as enemies, but as allies. Every action sent a heartbeat through the system, not as a counterattack, but as a wave of order. No alarms sounded, no screams echoed. Everything was precise: timing, loyalty, control. After finishing, each crew left behind the same symbol, a burn etched into the metal, a jagged eye shape. The Zenadal had never marked their work before. Now they did. not as infiltrators but as comrades. The tactical board flickered once, then pulsed. Red zones shifted, some turning yellow. One even blinked green. Colonel Trent moved forward. "We've just reconnected with the lunar relay net. Local authority nodes are responding from Phobos and Venus sectors." Major Edos stared at the feed, puzzled. "How? We didn't send anything." Archer remained silent at first. Then, as the board lowered into recalibration, he stepped closer. "They've been with us all along," he said, eyes steady, "waiting for this moment." He didn't smile, but for the first time in days, he stepped away from the screen. While the galaxy shook with flickering lights and signals from Phobos and Europa, nothing moved beyond Neptune's frozen edge. No transmissions, no communications, no signs of life, only the emptiness of space and heavy silence. The real human fleet hid there, cloaked in layered thermal baffles and reflective mesh. Their ships formed huge circles that bent gravity around them. The hulls shone black like obsidian. Systems ran on fiber optic cables and magnetic triggers. They floated like stone monuments, unseen by scans but alive and strong. The fleet had no name in public, no beacon ID or broadcast signals. The High Command simply called it Gravemind. Back near Saturn, the third Rathari fleet watched the signals from the reclaimed zones. They felt an unexplainable fear. Aboard the Enshoreva, Sorex stood still. Tiny tendrils flickered in quiet pulses while he examined sensor readings. The anomalies glowed gold and red across the main array. The feedback was not intense. It was calm, but clear. There were barely measurable distortions and pressure shifts, along with inconsistencies in distant gravitational harmonics, but they were repeated, regular and predictable, akin to breathing. Commander Ulath Ven, a senior Kulul tactician embedded with the fleet, shifted nervously in his ambient tank, his translucent body pulsing with stress light down his flanks. "That pattern again," Ulath Ven croaked, expressing concern. "3 cycles now. This is no random drift." Sorak, focused on the data, instructed a technician to amplify the last echo overlay against known stellar drift models, which revealed that the patterns had realigned and were no longer random. They appeared spaced rhythmic. Another Rathari, younger and sharper, leaned closer to the console and remarked, "That's a staging grid," to which Sorak finally spoke, "or a fleet hiding in one." Component placement. After a moment of silence, Ulath shifted again and expressed their previous encounters with ghost ships and automated units, leading Sorak to conclude, "But if they are puppets, then someone is still holding the strings." Sorak then turned toward the operations chief and issued the command to launch probes for a full sweep of the outer system, searching beyond Neptune and deep vector arcs. 8 long-range probes were deployed from the fleet, but none returned. 3 vanished mid-jump, 2 transmitted static, and then ceased, and 1 returned a single distorted frame, revealing a shadow far too large to be a ship, blocking starlight across 1/3 of the image. As the Rathari command center darkened, the ambient lights dimmed in silent acknowledgement of the loss, without any alarms, just raw data. Sorak, with a quieter voice, ordered to send another wave of probes, while Ulath Ven remained locked on the display, pondering the situation. The shift began with gravity, as sensors detected anomalies on the far edge of their surveillance net, revealing gravitational distortion waves, layers, and interference patterns too symmetrical to be natural. The Rathari physicist on duty, Zoran Telk, acknowledged the gravitational anomalies, suggesting that they could be related to ship mass or planetary activity. But the localized nature of the anomalies puzzled the team. The young communication officer noted the absence of any objects on scope, prompting Zoran Telk to express concern. That's the problem. Then one of the ships moved, just enough to disrupt the gravity field in its immediate space, leading to more movement from other units, and eventually, 97 units activated their cores simultaneously, emitting low-energy resonance pulses without any weapons or engine heat, but signifying their presence. The gravitational web blinked and then stabilized, clearly warped by thousands of massive objects, invisible to every eye, trapping the prey without their notice. Aboard the Enshoreva, Sorak stood frozen, while Ulath Ven queried, "Are those human?" To which Sorak remained silent. Upon recalibrating the projection, the technician observed, "There's no life signs." Ulath Ven reacted with narrowed eyes, stating, "The ones we've fought, those weren't manned either. No signals." Zrenia, the technician, added, "No AI signature, no neural flux, just mass structure." Zurentelk, with a sharply inhaled breath, barely audible, expressed, "It's not a fleet." Zurentelk continued, "It's a construct," with wide eyes, explaining, "One structure broken into form like armor, a skin of ships." Sorax, with a colder tone, instructed, "Prepare to withdraw now." The navigation officer promptly entered coordinates, lit the engines, and locked the warp vectors. However, the field didn't respond. There was no fold, no surge, and the stars remained still, trapping them in the universe. The jump cores blinked amber and went inert, leading the navigator to exclaim, "Gravlock, we're caught." Ulath Ven snapped, questioning, "No anchors, no gravitational sources. They're making it." Zorentelk whispered, "The field, it's artificial," as panic began to seep through the silence. Then, on the edge of the field, more lights appeared, slowly revealing enormous pitch-black silhouettes, shifting from invisibility to shape, forming the outer wall of a sphere. On the Enshoreva, Sorex, staring at the central projection, remained silent, leaving the crew waiting for his word. A junior sensor officer, staring at the distortion map, whispered to himself, "That's not a reading error. It's a shadow, and it's alive." Zrenie выражение кабинет. Няма праздник или аплодисменти. Само. One line of data blinking across the screen. Lieutenant Saw reported to Archer, "Sir, fleet integrity at 100%. They've never seen us." Logically, Colonel Trent leaned in, emphasizing, "We're inside their gravity well. Total vector advantage." Зрение после короткого молчания спросил обстановку, на что Сев быстро подтвердил. «Все узлы зеленые, плащ держится, реакторы заряжены, выстрелы распределены." Swinged forward, his face tense but steady. "They are unaware of what they are observing, sir." Archer paused, remaining silent. "Good," he stated. The tranquil light pulsed. He lifted a hand but refrained from making contact. Surrounding him, the board illuminated. Outside, the Leviathan stirred, one command away from transforming the darkness into flames. The map remained steady. It watched. The command light shifted to green. Within the core bridge of the UNS Leviathan, the flagship of the human war fleet, concealed beyond Neptune, the war room sprang to life. The circular command deck, buried beneath 2 meters of reinforced plating and magnetic shielding, was quiet as the stars outside began to shift. General Archer did not need to vocalize the order. He merely lowered his hand. 10,000 warships responded. From the void, the human fleet emerged like a memory too vast to remain hidden. Not all at once, but in waves. Formations unfolded like blades drawn from invisible sheaths, decloaking in synchronized patterns across every axis of the grid. Black hulls shimmered into view, edges lined with magneto-reactive armor and stealth-absorbent tessellation. Turret banks slid into locked positions, reactors powered to full capacity, hull plates braced. Each ship displayed no insignia, no embellishment, only cold readiness. The Rathari noticed them too late. Aboard the Ensure Valle, panic finally breached containment. "New contacts!" screamed the comms officer. "Multiple vectors, mass signatures exceeding protocol class." "How many?" Sorak snapped, tendrils rigid and curled beneath his robes. The technician stammered. "Thousands, sir, up to 10,000 vessels. They are surrounding us." Zoran Telk's breath rasped through his throat sacs. "This is not a response fleet. It is an extinction grid." Across the bridge, command voices rose, layered and frantic. "They are deploying in perfect hemispheric entrapment. We cannot break orbit. There is no breach vector. They are everywhere." Olthan swam to the edge of his command tank, his eyes wide and clouding over. From the very start, we were blind. On the Leviathan, Colonel Trent moved closer to the tactical display. The encirclement phase is complete. The outer perimeter is locked. They have no remaining vectors. Lieutenant Saw turned and stated that the Saturn grid is active. Archer's gaze remained fixed on the center hollow. "Engage suppression," he commanded. Deep beneath the icy plane of Saturn's rings, a silent structure flickered to life. An ancient, deep well transmitter co-engineered by human and Zenidal scientists decades ago. Its signal was not visible. It was not loud. It was absolute. A pulse, soundless and unseen, rippled from the rings. It was not an explosion, but a veto. Gravity itself declared number. It was calibrated to anchor warp cores into false negative feedback. Every Rathari vessel that attempted to prime its jump engine encountered only static and system null. Back on the Ensurva, chaos erupted. Fold drives were failing. Vectors would not lock. Engine response was degraded. Cirque observed as his fleet disintegrated into fragmentation. There was no cohesion, no escape. In front of him, dozens of human dreadnoughts hovered in complete silence. Inside the war room, Eidos whispered, "Sir, they are frozen. Their entire command fleet is static." Archer nodded once. "Hold formation! No fire!" Colonel Trent narrowed his eyes. "Do you want them to see it? I want them to remember it." Back in the Rathari Corps Command, the final attempts to coordinate a retreat collapsed. Audio traffic looped with errors. Chain of command signals fell into recursive dead zones. Automated systems seized. One of the officers screamed in a fractured dialect, throwing his data slate across the deck. Ulath Ven's voice cracked. "We were supposed to crush them." Sorak did not move. He looked at the map. 10,000 warships formed in silence, aimed, powered, surrounding every Rathari vessel without so much as a flare. Then he turned. "Transmit," he ordered, "full band galactic open frequency. They are everywhere." Ulthan swam to the edge of his command tank, his eyes wide and clouding over. From the very start, we were blind. On the Leviathan, Colonel Trent moved closer to the tactical display. The encirclement phase is complete. The outer perimeter is locked. They have no remaining vectors. Lieutenant Saw turned and stated that the Saturn grid is active. Archer's gaze remained fixed on the center hollow. Engage suppression, he commanded. Deep beneath the icy plain of Saturn's rings, a silent structure flickered to life, an ancient deep well transmitter co-engineered by human and Xenidal scientists decades ago. Its signal was not visible. It was not loud. It was absolute. A pulse, soundless and unseen, rippled from the rings. It was not an explosion, but a veto. Gravity itself declared number. It was calibrated to anchor warp cores into false negative feedback. Every Rathari vessel that attempted to prime its jump engine encountered only static and system null. Back on the Insurva, chaos erupted. Fold drives were failing. Vectors would not lock. Engine response was degraded. Cirque observed as his fleet disintegrated into fragmentation. There was no cohesion, no escape. In front of him, dozens of human dreadnoughts hovered in complete silence. Inside the war room, Eidos whispered, "Sir, they are frozen! Their entire command fleet is static." Archer nodded once. "Hold formation! No fire!" Colonel Trent narrowed his eyes. "Do you want them to see it? I want them to remember it." Back in the Rathari Corps Command, the final attempts to coordinate a retreat collapsed. Audio traffic looped with errors. Chain of command signals fell into recursive dead zones. Automated systems seized. One of the officers screamed in a fractured dialect, throwing his data slate across the deck. Ulath Ven's voice cracked. "We were supposed to crush them." Sorak did not move. He looked at the map. 10,000 warships formed in silence, aimed, powered, surrounding every Rathari vessel without so much as a flare. Then he turned. "Transmit," he ordered. "Full-band galactic open frequency." The transmission commenced unexpectedly. Across the known galaxy, on civilian hubs, military platforms, trade routes, and border colonies, screens flickered once before, stabilizing into a singular image. General Archer stood alone in full uniform with the seal of Earth positioned behind him. There were no flags, no anthem, no ambient sound, only silence. His gaze was fixed on the lens, unwavering. "You monitored our actions. You overlooked the fact that we were the ones who created them. There was no preamble, no escalation." He did not blink. The feed transitioned into a split display. On the left, the debris of Rathari vessels drifted in silent procession, towed through escort corridors by human patrol ships, their weapons deactivated and engines cold. They offered no resistance. They were not captives, merely remnants. On the right, orbital scaffolds illuminated. Human and Xenodel engineers collaborated at the shattered frame of relay platform 3 Delta above Mars. Sparks erupted from torches. Cable lines were reconnected. Stabilizers were realigned by 4-limbed Xenodel technicians whose forms no longer concealed themselves beneath human disguise. They stood exposed, unmasked, present. In a communications hub on Luna Prime, civilians congregated around a transparent screen as 2 figures appeared. Major Teaser Brenner of the UN's Mellon and Errol, the same Xenodel who had previously infiltrated Earth under the alias Jacob. They stood above the fractured foundation of the Leonov station. The wreckage fused to the dusty red horizon behind them. Neither uttered a word. Brenner extended his hand. Errol accepted it. There was no salute, no translation, no necessity. One war concluded, another type commenced. The screen lingered there, fingers clasped, firm, silent, until the visual faded to black. Back on the central feed, Archer remained motionless. He continued, his voice low and steady. "We have been referred to by many names. Primitive, unstable, obsolete, myths, and a threat. He averted his gaze for merely half a second before re-establishing eye contact with the lens. And we listened. For a millennium, we listened. Now the feed shifted once more. Footage from various human sectors played slowly. Interior views of recovered control rooms. Soldiers rescuing injured civilians from collapsed corridors. Zenedal and human medics collaborating side by side. One scene depicted a group of children being guided through the remnants of a bunker in the Pacific Ridge, accompanied by a tall, armored human officer and a Xenodel whose eyes glimmered gold under the emergency lights. The children exhibited no fear. They gazed up at both figures with identical expressions. Safety. Archer's voice re-emerged over the visuals. We did not forget our identity. We opted for silence, not surrender. Patience, not absence. The screen then expanded to reveal the Rathari fleet, drifting through Saturn's corridor, scattered and motionless. Their vessels were now marked not by battle scars, but by escort tags that were coded, logged, processed, and orderly. Then came the concluding sequence. A camera drone, operated from within the Leviathan, hovered along the length of the human fleet, gradually passing beneath dozens, then hundreds, then thousands of holes. Each ship maintained its position without drifting. No formation was disrupted. No pilot altered course. This was not for show. This was a declaration. The drone traversed the outer perimeter and entered the central formation until it arrived at the war room itself. Archer advanced one last time. "This is your history lesson," he stated. "Next time, do not rewrite it. Read it more thoroughly." The final cut appeared without transition. Archer's image disappeared. In its place, a message in clear galactic standard was etched into every screen. "If you want something accomplished, do it yourself." The feed concluded. Silence reclaimed the stars. Not the silence of absence, but the silence of recalibration. On Varnari Prime, the insectoid archivists recorded a new entry under first-class historical events. On Solaris 8, the Sulvar delegates canceled their upcoming summit and mandated a comprehensive review of diplomatic assumptions concerning Earth. On Altari 3, the skeletal dignitaries made a rare broadcast. "We miscalculated, correction acknowledged." Even on the remote world of Valansar, where the Skriari held no regard for organic strategies, one elder caste member simply gazed at the static feed and remarked, "They constructed that in the dark." Back on Earth, beneath the reinforced sky of New Geneva, two children, one human and one not, raced across a restored training field adjacent to the ancient citadel ruins. The Zenedal child tripped, laughed, and rose once more. No one intervened, and no one observed them with suspicion. Address the periphery of that field, an elderly technician knelt beside an open panel. Inside, next to the old Earth defense emblem, was a new symbol meticulously etched into the alloy by hand. A fractured eye, a Xenodel mark, but it was no longer solitary and no longer concealed. Once a symbol of surveillance, it had transformed into a signature. Greetings, space human. I am genuinely interested in your opinions regarding this video. Please leave a brief comment to share your thoughts, or simply say hello if that is your preference. Regardless, I would be delighted to hear from you. Additionally, one final note. Every esteemed soldier understands that self-care is essential for survival and heroism. Therefore, before you depart, please review the pinned comment. Believe me, it is significant. I have also selected another video for you to view. Just click the card here or here if you wish to access the entire playlist. See you there!